Okay, great. Sorry, technical.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem.
And let me just go ahead and just cut, and I'll just copy and paste it onto the chat window so I can read it out. And okay, I don't seem to be able to do that.
Just read it to us.
It's okay. Let me just read it. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a commentary that was close to my heart when I read it. So I'll just read it out to all of you. And this is from the mother's teachings. I mean, she's commented on it. It's a commentary. So it says, shall I accept death? Or shall I turn and wrestle with him and conquer? That shall be as God in me chooses. For whether I live or die, I am always. What is then thou called death? Can God die? O thou who fears death, it's life that has come to thee, sporting with a death head and wearing a mask of terror. There is a means to attain physical immortality, and death is by our choice, not by nature's compulsion. But if someone who belongs to the divine and wants to live in the truth knows that the divine will keep him on earth as long as he perceives his usefulness on earth, and will make him leave the earth when he has nothing more to do then. So the question cannot arise, and he will live quietly in the certitude of the divine supreme wisdom. So I think what I really got out of this is that we can choose whether we want to die or not. It doesn't have to be by nature's compulsion. And that ultimately we belong to God. So I only read out this part. There's a lot more. It'll take too long to read the whole thing. But basically, the Mother and Sri Aurobindo always talked about perfecting the human body, about how one brings in, and that's exactly where I think Leonard's methods are so useful, because through the spiritual purification and practices of breath work, we have an opportunity to perfect the human body. And when they're writing about this, they talk about the possibility that, yes, one can choose physical immortality. And at the same time, the mother also raises another question. She says, you have to decide whether you really want to live in the same body for that many years. And if that is the most useful way to be immortal, is physical immortality the best way for you to be immortal, or based on doing the divine's work? So there's a lot of emphasis in doing the work of the divine. So the question she raises, and which is probably why it's resonating with me, is I too have that question. Am I better off sometimes being physically immortal, or am I better off sometimes letting a body go, knowing and taking a new one, because that's going to help me do, carry out the divine purpose better. And that's where I am, Heike. I just thought I'll honestly share.
Yes, absolutely. And I will share later a little bit about Rudolf Steiner, who also develops this idea. And but I will share some about the basic assumptions that we have for this day, not just of Rudolf Steiner, but about all the contributions that we are sharing here. But first of all, is there anything else? I mean, I love your sharing, and I truly admire, and I'm so grateful for all the work that you do, because you're basically living, you are a living example, and you practice and you inspire all the people around you with these ideas of mastering the physical body, but mastering the mind, and also mastering the emotional body, and becoming a whole divine human being. And I'm very grateful all the time every time I can talk to you. You're such an inspiration. All the work that you do is such an inspiration. Anything
Heike.
else you would like to share with us?
I think it's just that question on, physical immortality. Are we referring to the same body, or are we talking about, because that's what I found when I researched. And I presume that, I mean, of course, Leonard always talks about the same body has the capacity to become immortal. And maybe the last comment would be, is that something that's granted to us, right? Rather than us, we can strive for it, but it's ultimately God's decision, is sort of what was resonating with me. And I'll just leave it at that for now.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jayashree. Yeah, I first like to speak some about the basic assumption of physical immortality. And so when we look at the world as it is now, it's usually materialistic. That means it only takes into consideration that there is matter, and then there is a psychological part of us, so that human beings only have two parts, meaning we have a physical body that is based on different cellular interaction, but there is no spirit in it. And so in all the work that we do and all the teachings that we are sharing today, there is the assumption that we are not just matter and mind or emotions, but that we have spirit, and that we are spirit, that we are spiritual beings, and that the spirit is actually in the physical body as well in our mind and in our emotions, and that we are a monad, as also Rudolf Steiner calls it, that we are the higher self that is totally based, or that is the spirit. And we are sparks of that divine consciousness, all of us in oneness, and that is the ground of our being. So that we are spiritual beings, and that we do have a physical body, and that physical body can also be immersed, and that was what Leonard called, that we can include the physical body into the conscious life of the eternal spirit. And so I will share about Rudolf Steiner, because he also asked the question, why do human beings die? And then he has a very interesting answer to that. But one other assumption is that there is other beings around us that guide us and support us. And some of them have incarnated into a physical body. And like Sri Aurobindo, the mother, seers that had vision and that had knowledge on a base that most of us don't have on a daily basis, like Rudolf Steiner. He was perceiving and living in a different reality, like the mother and Sri Aurobindo, and they're inspiring us. And then Anneliese Garing, for example, and I also would like to talk about Babaji, because Babaji was the inspiration for Leonard, and Babaji was beyond all that. He was Shiva Yogi. He was the incarnation of full consciousness and knowing all thoughts and all actions of humanity and guiding humanity, and was the inspiration behind Leonard's teachings and all the things that I do. I feel him behind me in guiding and supporting me, including guiding me now into the anthroposophical work. So there is no competition on that level. There's beings around us who support us, and who, some of them are very high in their evolution, and I can only express my gratitude for that. And so there is a world of spirit around us, and there's other beings and nature elements, and we have to learn to to perceive that kind of reality, the spiritual reality. So that is a basic assumption of what I talk about. And is there any comments on that from anybody here who would like to share about those assumptions? Anybody? Jane?
I think that's absolutely right. And I had something happened the other day. I was doing a Jara session, and I had this, either realization or message or something that there are all sorts of other dimensions that we perceive. We perceive one dimension, and there are all sorts of other dimensions, and we need to learn to see some of the others. We need to learn to be in touch with some of the others, and the spirit body is the guiding force, is the most important part of us, and this almost doesn't matter in a way. This material stuff is an expression of something else that's much more alive and important. Yeah, it's just my thought anyway.
Great, thank you. Well, maybe so Leonard talked about the 3 levels of enlightenment, and he called it spiritual enlightenment, mental emotional enlightenment, and physical enlightenment. And so he talked about spiritual enlightenment in a way to say, when you understand that your thoughts create your reality, then you're spiritually enlightened. So understanding the power of the mind and how we create our reality with our thoughts, then we are spiritually enlightened, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are emotionally enlightened. And so emotionally enlightenment would mean that we have incorporated true love, that we have healed all the things that are in the way of love, all the biggies, he called them the big traumas of human consciousness, that we have become such balanced and harmonious people that we're radiating only emotionally that love. So that we contribute to the world and make it a better place. And so Leonard always joked that healing the emotional mind might take us 50 or 100 years. It wasn't sort of a joke, but it was sort of like be patient with yourself, because you can be spiritually enlightened and you can still, somebody steps on your toes and you can explode into another reality. Even so, you might not act it out, or but you can still get immersed or regressed into the memory of that stuck energy, that dense energy that could be fear, that could be hate or anger or jealousy or greed or something like that. And so healing those things, we have to be patient with ourselves, because it is not done in a 3-week training. It is not done in a year's time. And he wanted us to create spiritual community, to live that and to balance each other out. And so spiritual enlightenment, mental emotional enlightenment, and then the next step would be physical enlightenment. And that answers maybe, or is in what Jayashree was asking. Do we want this physical body to be the vehicle of that grace, that godliness, and how long, and what can we actually do to maintain the physical well-being, the physical health, the order, the organization in that physical structure? And he called that physical enlightenment. And so he always referred to the people that master this, the immortal yogis. And so he was always looking for those people that would give him more understanding on how to maintain the physical body healthy and alive. And he wasn't interested in reading anything about anybody who wasn't into physical immortality. So it was actually after Leonard's passing that I started studying Rudolf Steiner. I found a book which I had for years, like I have many books, and Leonard loved reading books. And so I was always reading, and when I read the book of Rudolf Steiner, where do I have it? It's here. It's How to Know Higher Worlds. I had like an opening, a spiritual opening to another dimension, because I find Rudolf Steiner has such deep insights into the higher worlds, and he can describe them to us that we can really get an awareness of it, and also teaches practices that you can perceive those higher worlds. So what you were talking about, that there is different realities or realms that we can tune into, but there is that limitation in most of us that we are not aware, that we can't perceive it. And for me, Rudolf Steiner is opening a way of perceiving these things, and first of all, techniques that I can use, or methods that I can use to tune in and perceive that. And so it's all based on those three ideas. And what I love about Leonard is that he put it into the bigger context. And Leonard had a deep intuitive knowing of this, but he wasn't also perceiving those individual realities necessary. He was very much living in his being, his natural divinity, and that loving being, approving of himself and approving of other people. And that's what most of us really felt so in awe of and loved being in his presence, because he was just that calm, listening, open space that we could be in and be loved for who we are. So, but the details about the other worlds were also not so much in him. And so Leonard always asked the question, when somebody dies, what are they teaching us? And so I have to ask, of course, what did Leonard teach me with his death? I mean, what did go, what happened to him? And also, how do I proceed with it? And so the question that Jayashree asked is, do we want this particular physical body to last? And how can we do that? Or is it okay to leave that body? For Leonard, it was in theory, or in his mind, it was never a reality. He laughed about death till his last conscious moment. And so that's true for, I think, Sri Aurobindo, or for the Fillmores who created the Unity Church, that death was just not an option. And the physical body had its own dynamic that, so Rudolf Steiner talks about the forces of Ahriman and Lucifer. And so Ahriman is basically the force that makes everything dense and wants to pull it down into earth. And that's why, in your physical structure with the aging process, you might feel that density or that rigidness. And so I'm battling with those forces of Ahriman so that I keep my body flexible and that it doesn't surrender to those forces. And the Luciferic forces are basically, then we think we are just spacey and airy, and we are not connected to and grounded to the physical world. So we think we are more than God, and we don't need God. And the Ahrimanic forces are the forces that keep us controlled and stuck and not live our natural divinity. And so I find that all these teachings that we are talking about today, they all have that same basic concept. So if I may go now into Rudolf Steiner, if that's okay for you. In a talk that he had in Berlin on the 24th of October 1905, he asked the question, and I have it in front of me in German, so I will be translating. But he asked the question, he talked in his talks, he gave lots of talks, he wrote lots of books, he created the biodynamic, farming, and he created Waldorf schools, and he was the inspiration behind all aspects of life because he wanted to include the spiritual concept into all of our aspects. And so before he was talking about karma and reincarnation, meaning we are collecting as human beings because we learn to become self-responsible. Different than any other species, human beings have that opportunity now to become responsible for our actions, while all other realms are basically embedded in that divine consciousness, and there is no choice. There is no going astray. It's just living in that divine glory. But human beings are beautiful, powerfully created so that we can actually choose that reality of the divine, or we could live in a stuck materialistic world and don't acknowledge that there is a higher power. And the materialistic philosophy right now, that's all about that we don't have that power. And so he in Rudolf Steiner's writings here, he talked about that there is 3 worlds, and he talks about that a lot, that we are living in the mental, in the, where we are thinking, and then in the world of our feelings, and in the physical form. And that with death, all these, and our will, I forgot that. So it's the thinking, the feeling, and the will, and that we have to become conscious of each of those aspects. And for me, that is what Leonard also talked about. We become spiritually enlightened, we become emotionally enlightened, so we become conscious of our feelings, and we have goals. We are clear on the willpower that we have. And that's the beauty of being a human being also, that we have a will that is free will, that is so sacred, that can be used to harmonize the world around us, and it can be used to destroy. And that we see that in every war and everything that's going on in the world. But there's nothing wrong with having that. It is just now up to us how we channel our thoughts, our feelings, and our willpower, and what we want to materialize and manifest with it. And and then Rudolf Steiner talks about the superior I consciousness, that being that is not my lower I, myself, but that it is supreme or the superior awareness of myself, and that is guiding all this. And he basically, I'm trying to make a summary of it. When we can figure out, or when we understand the interaction of my will, my feelings, and my thoughts, how they create reality, and when I can separate them and stay conscious in each one. What am I thinking? How does my thinking influence my feelings? How do my feelings interact with or create my actions? Then when I can separate them, and he talks about that happens at death too, that everything falls apart because we don't have a physical body anymore. But when I can stay conscious with each of those aspects of my divine being, then there is no more death. Then I might transition between one physical body and the next, but I don't experience that unconsciousness, that I lose communication with my being, or that I'm forgetful about other lifetimes, memories, experiences. And that this monad, this inner seed inside of me, that is guiding all the three of them. And that the physical body is just a garment. And Leonard also had the affirmation that my physical body is my cloak, my natural cloak, in which I clothe myself, and that I can keep that healthy and alive. And then I just want to, so the consciousness of my divine being in its all aspects and parts, and being able to understand the interaction, opens up my perception of the spiritual world, because I can enter with my consciousness the spiritual world and perceive all the beings around me and all the other participants in this divine creation of life. And then I just want to read, because I find that very profound. So the evolution of the higher human has to happen when we create harmony in our astral body. So we have to perceive that we have an astral body. That's also feelings, that we have an etheric body, that life body. Leonard always talks about the life urge and the death urge, that etheric body that keeps everything alive. And then also the physical body. And so the astral body we work on if we exchange our instincts against ideals, enthusiasm, and aliveness. So enthusiasm is something that for myself I find a great drive in my life, because when I get enthusiastic about something and I really love what I'm doing, it just makes me thrive. And so so our urges, we have to fight against our urges, and that we put our duties in front, that we work for the whole of humanity and for creating harmony. And so creating peace, he talks about creating peace. So when we create peace in these aspects, that we are loving, kind, balanced human beings, then we create peace in our astral body. And then we create peace in our etheric body. And then also when we create harmony with all the organs in the physical body. And that there is no part in us that fights against another part, because we're always fighting. And, you know, when we eat something that we maybe shouldn't be eating, then that food creates a fight in the body. There is some part in the body that says, oh, this is no good. And the other part tries to absorb the poisons and get rid of the poisons. And it starts a war inside the physical body. And we have an emotional war. There is this love that says, oh, we should love each other. And then there is the jealousy or the anger, and that says, oh, fuck all this. And then we have an emotional war. And so we need to harmonize all these our thoughts, our feelings, and our action, so that that will actually bring harmony ultimately in the physical body. And then he talks about the last one that I want to talk about is that the master by whom the physical body stays maintains the physical body, he is above karma. It's the progression of humanity that in the inner being of a human being, and that the self, that we don't look for the self in ourselves, that we look for it above ourselves, and that we can connect with the higher individualities, the higher beings. And so he doesn't call them immortal, physically immortal masters like Leonard called them, but he acknowledges the ability of human beings to create so much harmony in the physical body that it maintains itself. So yeah, and he talks about in his book here, How to Know Higher Worlds, very much about the basic emotional enlightenment that we teach in all the trainings. That is like how do you become a loving being. And so it's like becoming aware of interactions, becoming aware of your thoughts, becoming aware of your feelings, transforming negative feelings, not judging other people, to love other people, to listen to other people, and all this in his ways and his words. So I'm trying to understand his words and translate them into Leonard's words, or vice versa, because it's all the same. It's just expressed in different ways. So developing inner strengths, courage, and all the basic attitudes, so that we can ascend to a higher consciousness. Well, this any comments or anything on that, because then I can talk a little bit more about other people, but I would like to, maybe anybody who would like to give feedback on that or share their thoughts about that.
I could just a question from me.
Yeah.
Almost all the examples. So when I took the retreat with Leonard, he gave me examples of several Taoist masters as well as Indian gurus, right? In almost all the cases, they have withdrawn from society and focused on this. So that's sort of, is that what you're finding out even with China? I mean, there's a need to withdraw a bit, not to engage so much in even the so-called good work, right? It's your primary mission becomes to perfect the divine energy in your body, and then it's almost like whatever studies of it, it's almost like it's being given to you. It's not something you can demand.
Well, yes, we can't demand it, and but we can do our part in opening up to those realities, and do our emotional work to grow as a student of the higher teachings. And yeah, many of I will share one book that Leonard really loved. It's about the Arhats, the Buddhist immortals that still supposedly live on 12 mountains or 16 mountains in and waiting for the Buddha to return. They're also retreating. I think when you ask the question, why do these people maybe retreat? The world as it is now is very unharmonious, noisy. And I think that the true masters, they don't participate on that level of noise much. And and that's one of the basic teachings also of Rudolf Steiner, that we have to become still, and we have to go inside to perceive these higher worlds. And I think the immortal masters or true masters, they're living more in that inner reality, which merges then with all the consciousness around them. And they become one of the bigger consciousness or the overall consciousness, and living more in that. And they value their interaction to be on a level of consciousness that we have to grow into. And Leonard would always say that the immortal masters, they are not interested in somebody like Batraji, who does a performance of physical immortality every 108 years by having his body cemented into a tomb. Leonard always used to say, well, probably when you show up for the second time, so after 108 years, he did it again. When you show up for the second time, he might notice you. So I think that the masters retreat and guide us from a different place and wait for us to grow into that. But we do have the work to do the work. And that's true for anybody. All the books that I'm reading, we have to actually do the groundwork. We have to grow emotionally, or we have to undo. Leonard would always say, we don't train rebirthers, we untraining them. So we have to untrain the noise, let go of that noise. In that stillness, we can hear. And those perceptions of hearing will only, I have to let somebody in, will only develop when we become still. And from that point of stillness, we will communicate with the higher worlds. But we can't do that in that noisy life, busy life. We can learn to be in both places at the same time, but it takes a stillness. And so all what I'm reading with Rudolf Steiner is about how do I create that stillness and that awareness of my feeling, my thoughts, and my body, so that I can be aware of how they interact with each other. So when I think a hateful thought, Leonard writes that in the owner's manual. If you have a hateful thought, you have to do a hateful action. You have to prove that thought right. So how does that thought, my feeling of hate, then color my action? And I need to become conscious of those interactions. I can stop the action, I can stop the feeling, and I can also change the thought. And having that consciousness of those three worlds gives me, enables me to live my human potential. So let's see where I have the book about the ahats. Everybody is probably aware of Leonard's book on physical immortality. You can still get that on, there's still copies sold of that. And it's called The Science of Everlasting Life. And in the last years, Leonard, he said that he was never really interested in Buddhism till he found the book about the 16 ahats. Because for him, as I said before, it was only interesting to connect with people that were contemplating how to keep the physical body included in that higher consciousness. And so this is a book about those 16 ahats who have developed the harmony in their physical body that that maintains them on earth. And I read yesterday again in the book How to Reach Higher Worlds by Steiner that he says at the end you will have a choice. You could individually in your consciousness just ascend into spirit, but that is a black path. And the white path basically is that you come back and help all the rest of humanity, and that you maintain your connection and you keep coming back till everybody ascends to the higher consciousness. And you can do that, and that's maybe another answer to the question, do we need that one particular body, or can we come back in a different body? So, but knowing that I have that choice, that I could stay in that particular body, just makes me a more aware, conscious, and enables me to really master the physical element as well, to master that and use my freedom, use my choice, use my power to include that physical body into the divine consciousness. And I love that. When I heard the idea of physical immortality for the first time, I thought, wow, that is the idea, working in a nursing home, holding hands with so many people that died. I was always, I was only 19 when I started that, and I was like, what is the purpose of all this and the suffering? And most people would say, if I would do it again, I would do it all differently. Their emotional choices, their relationships, all their choices. And I thought, no, when I grow old, at that time I believed still in death, I thought, I will never say that. And that was one of my intriguing, my motivational forces, that I want to live my life consciously, fully, as long as I'm here. And for me, that's the basic idea of physical immortality. And when I have physical challenges, to not surrender to them and think, okay, that's nature. But now I have another word that is, oh, wow, Ahriman is working in some ways in my physical body, making it stiff. But my divinity is above this, and how can I use my connection to my divine power to say no to this? How can I stay conscious in my body and transform it and use my divine power? So Charles Fillmore and the Unity Movement, so he wrote a book that is called Atom Smashing Power of the Mind, also based on the assumption that there is a divine higher power above us. And in the Unity Church, they practice the prayers that Sarah always does too. That is acknowledging that there's just one power in the universe, and that power is good. And that power has my best interest and humanity in that's the only thing that exists. And in that power, I can choose to totally live in that reality, and that reality will heal, empower, harmonize my world. And there is, I am not a victim to any physical disease. I might have created it unconsciously with actions, with thoughts, with feelings. I might have gone astray, so to speak, but I have the power to set it right. And that divine power, when I acknowledge that only that power exists above all, nothing else can stay in my physical body. And so the prayers of the Unity Church, I find them very profound. And I've had experience when I was in those prayers where instantaneously healing was happening. And so when we acknowledge that divine power inside of us, and that we have direct access, and that's how all the saints heal. That's how Jesus heals. He says, not me, but my Father within me. He has that power, and he brings that peace and health immediately into my body. And so Bruno Gröning was one of the healers who lived in the 1950s in Germany. And actually he was forbidden to heal because it collided with the medical profession taking their clients away and their money business. But he was able, he would talk to people, to thousands of people. He would tell them, get out of your wheelchair, and they would, just like Jesus did. And so he was just using that force to heal other people. And what we're doing here today is basically just inspiring all our listeners and all of us to trust that there is that supernatural, that powerful force that enables us to develop as divine human beings. And it's based on love for all beings. It's based on harmony. And it's based on our divine will. Anybody would like to share anything so that I don't go into monologue too much more? Yes, Frank, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Frank.
Oh, great. The technical issues on my side are gone. I think it's a very interesting meeting, this one, about physical immortality. When I heard it the first time from the best teacher I ever had, Mr. Leonard Orr, I thought it was completely insane. But you know, I was not conscious at that moment in time about stuff and myself much at all. And now I feel I'm opening up to this subject matter, which is great. And the thing that I can't find yet in any teachings, including Leonard's, is the source of our, that we die, right? So, sorry, my English. What is the source of the fact that we all die? Where does it come from? This is what I miss in many teachings. And I never read a book about it, except maybe A Course in Miracles. And I think it's very important, well, actually it's essential that we understand where our death comes from. Because if you cannot understand the source of it all, then everything else that you do is basically symptom treatment. I make it a bit black and white. Of course, it's fantastic and very important to use the fire, use the breath, use the water and all that. I understand that. But I think it's also very important to combine it with understanding the source of the issue. That's my opinion. And that's also my, kind of experience.
Right. And so that's why I also, after Leonard's passing, I thought, okay, what do I do now? Obviously, he's missing something, or he made choices in his own life that led to his own death. And I need to either surrender to it and say, okay, Leonard, he was my teacher and he didn't make it, and so I won't make it. Or I find exactly that question, what is the source of it? And is there anything else that I need to think about? And so in that same talk of Rudolf Steiner, he talks about that is his basic thought of Steiner is that when we are not conscious of these worlds interacting and we, so to speak, fall asleep, or we are sleeping in regards to our awareness of the spiritual world around us, we are sleeping in regards to our feelings, we are just robots in our habits. If we don't have awareness of those three worlds, or these three human parts, it all falls apart. And when it falls apart and fights and disagrees with each other, then physical death happens.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can live with my consciousness in the material physical body and be totally aware of it and have harmony in it, that's the last step. What Leonard described, but also with Steiner, he says the last step in what I read before is like you have harmony in your physical body. But it starts before if you don't have harmony in your feelings. It starts before if you don't have harmony and consciousness about your mental reality. And we don't have, often, most of the time, we don't have knowing how my thoughts, how my feelings actually contribute to the life of other people, how I'm influencing, how I'm creating karma on those levels with other people. So if I keep being just that normal personality with all the shadow aspects and with all the low vibration, physical immortality is never possible. And Leonard was very aware of that the emotional healing has to come first. The mental the spiritual enlightenment, understanding my thoughts. And so as long as we are creating that unconscious disharmony in our interactions, the physical part is, we can't access the power over my physical structure. So I think what I read in everybody is that, first of all, I have to become a grounded, loving, caring human being before I can ever create that harmony in the physical body, because it is based on my thoughts and feelings.
I think, that's very interesting. I also think there's another aspect to it. Again, as you said about the body, we are physical, immortal by nature. However, the moment you die, your physical body and your mind do not transcend to the light that is God. So in the experience of your body and your mind in this lifetime, whenever you die, of course, And in previous lifetimes, and that's a key factor, in previous lifetimes, both your body, your physical body, and your mind were left behind on earth to die when your soul transcended back to the light that is God. So what does that mean? It means that both the body and the mind have a fear of that light, because in their cell memory of the body and the mind, to say it like that, there is this experience of, okay, when the light is coming to take the soul, I, the body, will die. I, the mind, will die. Because the body has its own intelligence, the mind has obviously its own intelligence, and they both have the conviction that when you as a complete unity of body, mind, and soul enter the light, the body will die and the mind will die. And that's why inside your body and inside your mind is a subconscious program that God will kill you. And that's why the body kills itself before it can be killed by God. That's why the mind kills itself kind of before it can be killed by God. And I never actually heard this teaching anywhere, but it's Babaji who told me this. And I think it's essential to understand this. And that's another thing that I really, really love about Leonard and his trainings, because in my memory, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he always started the first day with the story about Adam and Eve. I think it was you know this better, Heike, than me, of course, but I think it was in the first days of the 9-day training in my memory that he started the trainings with that. And I never understood it, but I think I understand it now better, because the story goes like this, right? There are two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And if we keep eating from the fruits of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we will surely die. And Leonard was teaching about this, and I never really got it. But nowadays, I think I get it better. And the explanation for me is like this. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it represents our belief, our knowledge in duality, good and evil. And eating the fruit of the tree means that we keep believing these thoughts of, I am separated from God, from the tree of life. That's what Leonard said, right? So if you keep eating from that fruit, it actually symbolically means, because the fruit of the tree of knowledge are thoughts, right? As you were talking about, Heike, about thoughts and the importance of it, if we keep believing in our conviction that we are separated from God, we will surely die. That's actually in the Bible. I'm not a Bible reader at all, but I think it's a really good story. And that Leonard brought it into the training on the first day. I think it's absolutely brilliant now, because this is the key to our physical immortality. Because if we understand that we create our own death and where it comes from, we can also supersede that, transcend that program in our mind, and not to forget in our bodies. The thing is, we all believe that God has killed us, right? There's a wonderful book as well. It's called A Course in Miracles. And basically what I explain now is also explained, maybe in a bit other words, in A Course in Miracles. And I think there's a very important key in that, because everything that we experience in our life is basically a mirror to our relationship with God. And that includes your relationships, sexuality, your money flow, your job, your physical health. Everything is connected with that. So if you can heal the only important relationship in your life, which is your relationship with God, which is your relationship with who you truly are, then you are free, because then you have attained what you already are, which is eternal life, oneness with God. And I think this is a teaching that needs to be brought to the world more. Amen.
Yes, totally. Yes. So when I talk about being conscious of other realities and being conscious inside of ourselves about our thoughts, feelings, and our actions, and having them in our under our power and control and staying aware of it, it's always under the assumption that we are that monad, that divine self, that spark of God's and children of God. And so that relationship is essential, the relationship that I have to the divine power, because I will not manifest anything good on a long term if I don't enter that reality of divine love and connection. So in that sense, yes. So the that's why I went out in my search to look for what is missing also, or what can I add. And so the staying conscious means to really get it under my, or immerse it in that divine power. That's what I mean when I say we become conscious, our thoughts, our feelings, and our action, to not just being aware I'm having a thought and it creates that reality, but having a thought that is in alignment with my divine heritage, with my divine being. So it's
Right.
not just that awareness, but it is that oneness in my thoughts, that I only contemplate powerful, beautiful, loving, kind thoughts, that I only have feelings of gratitude and humbleness. Humbleness is one of the words also that intrigued me with Rudolf Steiner first, having that humbleness. Who am I in my lower self? Aspiring for something greater, and being humble that I need to learn, that I need to grow, and to experience that oneness. So and that Christ consciousness, and Rudolf Steiner is very much based on that Christ consciousness, that he considers that Christ consciousness, that Jesus was born to bring into the world, that those energies of all our souls, that Christ consciousness that wasn't incarnated yet, and that Christ consciousness he brought down into the physical, into this reality. But that Christ consciousness is all our higher consciousness that we have access to.
Yes, I think that's very interesting. I keep it very short, but thanks to a set of affirmations, I mean, you started this meeting with great affirmations. Thanks to a set of affirmations that I received from Babaji, I was able to help a client, and she got into superpowers, she told me, into Christ consciousness. She was able to basically, well, perform magic. She felt like Superwoman. And the affirmations that I received for myself and her, they go like this. I, Frank, I, Heike, or Joanne, or Jane, or Jay, or Moral now. I, Frank, now fully forgive myself that I have believed in my separation from God. That's the first one. Second one is, I, Frank, now fully forgive myself that I hold on to that belief of separation for such a long time. And the third one is, I, Frank, I am fully alive in oneness with God already now. And if you repeat it 3 times, and then once again in the afternoon and the evening for like 3 weeks, well, potentially magic can happen, because then you feel that your subconscious program is altered. And so your physical experience, mind experience, and soul experience in oneness is changing. And it's a very powerful affirmation. And my belief has become that this is the most important key, next to all other important keys, that we need to understand and turn. Otherwise, we will keep living in a conscious or unconscious state of I am separated from God. And it will influence every aspect of your life forever until you die. And you have it in your own hands. Hallelujah.
Thank you. Everything
Yeah.
here, what we are sharing is enriching, and thank you, Frank. I just want to share about that now my thought is gone. I was looking at the I will come back to it, but
Can I say something, Heike?
Yes, sure. Go ahead, Joanne.
Just to what Frank just said, with feeling that we're separate from God. And to me, that begs the question, well, what is God? And I feel like we are all part of God, and what causes us to feel separate is our separateness from our true spirit, and our true joy and our true love, and all the things that we love to feel, and that all those feelings, though the ones that are unlike joy, love, and whatever, they're the ones that are causing us to die, because they're not our true nature. So right. I don't think I've explained myself.
I read that again. So Steiner, he says that not to know God is actually, he calls it a disease. That if we don't acknowledge God, it's actually a disease in the human being. And not to know the Christ consciousness, that means the love that we all are, is bad luck, real bad luck. And that if we don't know about the spirit that weaves amongst all ourselves and creates that oneness. I forgot what he said about that, but that also he had an attitude for that. I don't recall right now, but like the first step is that human beings have to be so healthy that we overcome fear and thinking that we are more than the divine, and arrogance is a word, that we overcome that arrogance that we think we are, as human beings, we are not embedded in a bigger divine reality. So that either out of fear we cannot see it, and out of arrogance we don't want to see it. And then we create that separation. And I would like to quote something of Anneliese Garin. She wrote many books, and so the titles are The Temple of God, The Secrets of Eternity, Beyond Mortal Boundaries, and Celestial Song of Creation. And it's just beautiful, beautiful words. They are so inspiring. And Ye Are Gods is one title that I like to read some. There is the easy way in which one can fill his mind so full of the vision desired, so full of prayer and hope and love, that there is no room for anything else. And she will explain that later. And it becomes necessary at first to almost pick up each one bodily and hurl it out, then bolt the door of consciousness against it, so against the negative thoughts. So shut it out. That fear, that anger, that hate against ourselves or against other people or about creation. People can experience real anger about being incarnated into this physical reality because of the so-called pain that they experience. And that, yeah.
I was I was going to say the idea of shutting it out is it's a resistance, which that creates more resistance. And so the approach I would take is to fill it with light and love and joy, like rather than actually trying to get rid of something. Like it's like as humans, we go around trying to change how we are instead of just really loving how we are. And yeah,
Well, she's referring to the miserable thoughts that I am a small being.
Yeah, so am I.
Right. And she talks also about the word I am. I was going more into that, but our 2 hours are really basically soon up. We could go on a long time. I just want to mention the words I am, because I am is used in most of the teaching, including Rudolf Steiner, including Annelies Garing, including Leonard, that is a statement that I make, acknowledging I am that supreme power. And she talks here about the I am to be bearing witness to his own existence and being, hence to the existence of the Creator also. These words, I am, bear witness to the very fact of life, which is of God. It is the very testimony of being or existing. And as man proclaims, I am, he is also bearing testimony of his own relationship to God and God's relationship to him. So there's many meditations. Also, what I'm doing now is to repeat, I am. It thinks, the collective consciousness thinks, and we are immersed in that collective consciousness. She feels, the whole world soul feels and vibrates that love, and he wills, he has will, that spirit of the world has will that we are immersed in, and we're using those aspects of our soul to create reality. So anybody who would like to, for the last moments, to share a little wish, will, prayer before we finish this meeting, and then hopefully some of you will be here. Most of you don't speak German, most of you don't speak Spanish, but then at 6 p.m. Central European time, we could meet again. And anybody who would like to give a prayer or a thought to finish our beautiful meeting here with each other. And happy birthday, Leonard, again. Okay, so I will finish this meeting in gratitude to all the masters and the teachers that inspired Leonard, to Babaji, to all the saints that we acknowledged today and talked about, and there are so many more. And if you are interested in developing as a human being, I think hearing Leonard said you have to, it's part of your intelligence to put the words physical immortality in your vocabulary as a divine being, as a divine potential that we have in ourselves. And I'm happy for anybody who listens to this also in the future. And thank you for those beautiful beings here, Joanne, Jayashree, Jane, Frank, and I think it's Angela, and all the people on Facebook that are here with us and were here. And this was a meeting of RIBA, Rebirth International Breathwork Association, and we have more meetings today. Thank you, everybody. I will stop the recording. Sending love to the whole world. Joanne in Australia, Jayashree in India, Jane in England, and Frank in Holland. And thank you, and hope to see you again. Thank you, Jayashree. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.